This session is dedicated to the impact assessment of citizen science project. I'm Antonella Passani. I'm a social scientist and partner and head of research at T6 Ecosystem, which is an SME consultancy company based in Rome, Italy. As a background, I'm a sociologist with a minor in cultural anthropology, and I've been doing research on the border between ICT and human beings in the last 17 years. And the methodology you will see has been developed together with my colleague at Drift, which are Anneli Hansen and Katarina Holzer. Anneli is here, and Anneli, if you want to say hi, this is your moment.
Hello.
Okay.
Everyone's just seen me
in the previous.
I'll get my clothes on now.
Exactly. The methodology we developed is being co-designed with the first round pilots and with the partners pilot at Action. But it's important, what I want to state very clearly is that it's still ongoing, and we really want to co-design it further with you, improve it, enlarge it, adapt as much as needed, so that at the end, we will have, as part of the action toolkit, a methodology that is able to support different kind of citizen science project. This is the main challenge. There are several methodologies out there for impact assessment of citizen science, but because the citizen science can be very diverse, in terms of activity, in terms of methodology, in terms of community engaged, and because the impact can be very, very different, the challenge was that of creating a modular, flexible, adaptable, but also operationalized and broad methodology. So this is what we tried to do, and what we would like to improve with your help in the next months. I know that some of you already do impact assessment, so I'm sorry for those that are already familiar with these topics. But for the others, let's explain a little bit what is impact assessment. Basically, it means answering the question, what is the difference a project makes, for whom, and how can it be measured in quantitative terms or described in qualitative terms. Basically, what we want to be able to say is that the situation after pilot is different from the situation before the pilot, and how much it is different, and also, if possible, why this impact happened, how we reach those results, those impacts, why we should do the impact assessment, which I know is a time-consuming activities and is not easy. But I think we think that is useful for evaluating the activities and the process and the progress made by a project, and can be a very useful tool for talking to your stakeholders, especially decision makers, policy makers, potential funders, but also the people the volunteers that you engage, to show them that that all their activities, all their effort, the investment they made in the project affected the society, the economy, the environment, or any other aspect. The methodology we develop is based on the impact logical framework. So we start with analysis of the input, which is not only the funding that Action is providing you, but also what was there before. So because especially this year, your project, your pilot are building on top of already existing activities. So it's important to be able to trace a line and see what was there at day 0, at day 1, and what will be there at the end. Then we monitor activities, output, outcome, and impact. Of course, to be very, very transparent and honest, normally impacts happen after the end of a project, end of the pilot, can happen also 3 to 5 years after that. It can, in some even can take longer. For example, if you do a citizen science project with kids or with students, the impact you see on their learning can be visualized, can be demonstrated today at the end of the pilot. But if the pilot then generates an interest in science or in the environmental issues you're talking about, that bring or push them to become scientists or to become biologists or entomologists, that is something you cannot know at the end of the pilot. You will know in 10 to 15 years, and we will not be there to measure. So most of the time we talk about expected impact. By looking at what we can see in terms of output and outcomes, we generate hypothesis or scenario on what this will generate later on. In order to support the citizen science project pilots, we developed the impact assessment canvas, that is the file you just received. It's a 4-page Excel file, and we will go through it. This is the first step of our impact assessment process. Let's see. Basically, we ask you to define the key problem you want to address with your project and the key research question. And you already wrote this in the proposal for your pilot, so you can definitely copy and paste from there. You will write this again in your activity report, in your activity planning you're developing with your mentor. So again, we do not want to double work. You can also just write, see the project plan or see the proposal, and we have access to it. But we created all these tools not only for the pilots that are in action, but for the future citizen science pilot. So to have something that can help any kind of citizen science team to run the impact assessment without our help. So you will have our help, our consultancy, our support, but we create tools that should be self-sustainable, let's say. Then you find the stakeholder mapping. You did the stakeholder mapping already in the last days, and you will do more tomorrow. Of course, some of the stakeholders you map it in terms of engagement, and the ones you will map in terms of dissemination will be the same for the impact, but some other will be different. We divided it in researchers, citizen scientists, other organization, business actor, general public, and policy decision makers. So again, here you can reuse the work that you're doing for the other activities, but keeping in mind the little difference that here you look at what you want to have an impact on, especially what kind of who you want to benefit and how. But also, if you think there could be negative impacts on those stakeholders, this is the time to map it. Or I know that we want to look at the positive impacts, but it can also be the case that there are negative impact for some groups, let's say. In the impact assessment canvas, you will also find you will also be required to click to select the typology of citizen science project you belong to. There are many categorizations. Action is using this one. So we divide citizen science project into action, conservation, investigation, virtual, and education. And you find here the definition, and this PowerPoint goes hands in hands with the impact assessment canvas, so you will have it, okay, for reading all the definitions and decide what kind of project you are. You can also select more than one. And this typology is the one that our colleague Gefjon developed based on literature, and that will be reflected in the action toolkit. Oh, okay. We find in the impact assessment canvas the impact logical framework that I just mentioned. So input, where are you starting from? what was there before the beginning of the project, what are the economic, technical, and human resources you will use, and how much do they cost? What kind of activities you are developing, and here basically you should link us to the activity plan you are developing. But for example, quality monitoring with low cost do-it-yourself sensors. We will have 5 events, 3 training workshops. The output, so what are the tangible results you expect to deliverable, how many persons you will engage, how many you will reach through communication, and how many policymakers. These questions, of course, are only examples. And as you will see, we will have questionnaires for you to dig into this. But at the beginning of the project, it's more like an exercise starting to put things on paper in terms of expectation. And short-term and long-term expert impact. Here, we just want a paragraph of what you want to achieve in free language, let's say. But what kind of impact are we measuring or describing? We consider scientific impact, social impact, economic impact, political impact, and environmental impact. So 5 dimensions plus another one, which is the transformative potential that I will describe you in a moment. So these 5 dimensions do not have to be equally interesting or relevant for your pilot. And this is totally nice. There is no project that look at the same way to these 5 areas of impact in an equal way. This is where the methodology becomes modular. So basically in the impact assessment canvas, at the beginning of the project, we ask you to rate the relevance of each areas of impact and subdimensions. Just for an example, like the pilot run by NILU, which engages students in measuring air quality with low-cost sensors, is not looking to scientific knowledge production. So their goal is not to gather data about air quality. Mm-hmm. They have data sets on that, but it's not the main expected impact. So let's say that scientific knowledge from 1 to 5 can score 2. While innovation education, which is the last subdimension of scientific impact, is a 5 for them, because they want to see if citizen science is a viable way for doing science, for teaching science, and for teaching environmental education with kids. And the same goes for the others. There are some areas of impact in which we will ask in any case questions, even if you rate them with a low score, because how it works is that basically we will ask you information only on those dimensions that are relevant for you, so that score 3 to 5. But again, there are things that for us are important by default. For example, social inclusion, which is one of the dimensions of social impact, is not something that you may have as a desired impact in your project, which is okay. But as we heard in this accelerator kickoff, for us as action and for responsible research and innovation practices, to be sure that our projects are inclusive or take in the due care the matter of diversity is important. So the question about social inclusion will be there for all of you. And you also will see behavioral change. This is not something that we will ask to all of them, but I ask you to think about it. This is something the European Commission is getting more and more interested in those days in relation to citizen science, and in relation to the fact that due to climate change, the role of citizens in changing their behavior in order to be ready for climate change adaptation or for reducing the risk related to climate change is something that they are looking at. And citizen science can be a way to promote more sustainable behaviors and practices. Economic impact. Everybody says zero to this. I know. It's not the main, it's not the piece of cake for all citizen science project, but citizen science can have an impact on employment in the sense that can generate work, can be a way to generate revenue and income for the leading organization by, for example, offering training or developing devices for data gathering, or consultancy for other citizen science projects. We did a webinar and an online event a couple of months ago, on sustainability, and there was a project that created a spin-off out of European project on citizen science, and they are going to the market, for example. So start thinking about if there is anything out there for you in this sense. And can be also an economic impact on the local communities. For example, if a citizen science project is a conservation project, the activity can improve, for example, the ecosystem of a given park or a neighborhood, and this can generate benefit for the people who live in this community that result to be less polluted or more green, and can attract tourism, can attract let's say more people for living there, or shops, or other kind of activity. So this is something we look at. Political impact. You did already the policy decision maker engagement workshop before me, so you know you know it all already. As a side effect of being part of a citizen science, we can see improvement in citizen participation in local community activities, in associations, in be interested in having more information on the topic, under discussion, to get more involved in the topic in general. And the citizen science project can have an impact on the policy process. For example, one of the projects financed by European Commission a couple of years ago measured the noise in Barcelona. Is not noise map, the one you heard on Monday. Another one. They measure with the citizens the noise level in some neighborhood, and this influenced the municipality that changed the regulation and put more strict rules on noise in some neighborhood. And the same was true in Brussels for air quality after a citizen science project. So there are examples and success stories on these two. Environmental impact. This is a tricky one, because most of the citizen science projects do not have a direct impact on environment, but they are educating in order to have an impact through behavioral change, or are willing to improve environmental situation through political impact. So, okay, I push for a better regulation on water management, and then I expect an improvement in water quality. But it's difficult to find citizen science project that measure the air quality at the beginning of the project and at the end, and see the improvement thanks to the activities carried out by the citizens. So here, when you give the score, try to understand if the impact you're looking for is a direct impact or is an indirect impact. And you see the impact that are listed there: impact on ecosystem, biodiversity, soil quality, water quality, air quality, are the ones that comes from the previous pilot. So feel free to add others if you work on other aspect of environment. And then there is impact on health. again, we put it in there in the environmental impact, can also go in the social or in the economic. It depends from which perspective you see it. But for example, some citizen science projects push for citizens to use the bike, for example. And this can have a positive impact on their health. There are studies that correlate the usage of bike with health metrics and performances that, of course, that need to be under analyzed, also considering for example, the level of pollution of a city. So yeah, you do something for your health by cycling, but if you cycle in a very polluted cities, then this is not exactly healthy anymore. So there are all these aspects to be considering, and this is when we enter in when the things get complicated. We do not expect you to do the maths, just to tell us you expect an impact there, and we will find a way to measure it. In the slides, you will find all the definitions, so all the definition of the dimension and of the on the areas of impact and the dimensions. And then you will say, okay, but now I know all of these, thanks. How do I measure? Don't worry, we will arrive there. Before going there, we talk about the transformative potential, which is the capability of a project to put in question, challenge the status quo. So this is the more revolutionary oriented part of the methodology, and see if the niche we are in citizen science, because we are a niche, we are engaging the 0.1% of the population. So the impact that we will have in any case cannot be massive, but are we building something that is able to trigger a transformation that is bigger than us? So to transform exactly to move from niche to regime. So are we going to change the mobility system, the energy system, the agriculture system, or the science system? How we do science, and the role of citizens, for example, in doing science. So the transformative potential have this look. Is qualitative, and is a self-assessment tool. So Anneli, correct me and jump in when you want, because this is a bit of work that has been developed by Drift and then adapted to action by our colleague at Drift. So the capability of your project to be transformative can be on different dimensions. So can be radical on the learning experience, can be timely, more or less timely. There are some topics that are very on top of the agenda, for example, the top of the political agenda, or on top of the communication agenda. Coronavirus, for example. So if you do something on coronavirus now, you are very timely. But there are others, of course. Iconic and catalyzing. So catalyzing capability to aggregate and attract more people. Iconic to be the wow effect of your project. And radical, how does make the impossible possible? How is it want to be disruptive in their innovation? Okay. There are also some research guidelines, because action is a research innovation action. For us, these are the following. Which values characterize a citizen scientist? We're talking about a niche. Okay, there is a link between the interest for citizen science and their value orientation of people. And here we use the materialistic, post-materialistic approach. That means basically if people is more looking toward the security, stability, tradition, or is more looking to change, idealistic way of living, yeah, I mean, not materialistic things are a priority versus the other one. What is the attitude toward environment before entering the project? Are we engaging people that is already interested in science, already interested in environmental issues, already pro collaborative action, already like us? Are we engaging the usual suspect? And this goes hand in hand with the inclusion, but is also a little bit, a little bit different. And there is an impact on the self-perceived efficacy of participants. What is the self-perceived efficacy? Is the belief of one person to be able to make a difference. Okay, so I work, for example, a lot. I worked a lot in school on bullying, and most of the students, when you ask them, what can you do for stopping this? They say nothing. There is nothing you can do. Or what can you do for climate change? Nothing. It's not something that I can have an impact on. And is this something we can change? Can we support people to perceive themselves as an agent of change? So, how we would like to work with you? The timing is to be decided, but once you will be officially part of action, you signed all the contract, etc., we will ask you to fill in the canvas, then and return it to us. Then we will have a one-to-one dedicated call for you in order to read what you wrote in the canvas, validate it, to be sure that we understand reciprocally what we mean with what we wrote. And this is, for us, it's very important, because some terms, I mean, we're trying to use everyday language terms, but still there are some terms that are a little bit technical, or that maybe we give for granted and they are not. So let's go see. And also planning the data gathering. Why so? Each pilot is different. So there are pilots which engage citizens that in a way that make it possible for them to answer, for example, to questionnaires. And that would be very nice. So we can measure the impact, not only the perceived impact that you can see as a citizen science managers, but we can also see the point of view of the volunteers. That would be very nice and is ideal. We should have an analysis at the beginning of the pilot and one at the end, so that we can compare the change. But we're also aware that this is not always the case. For many reasons, there is only a certain amount of work that you can ask to your volunteers. So we're perfectly aware of this, and we have to plan together what to ask, to whom, when. And in case we decide not to engage the volunteers in the assessment at all, which happened in other pilots, not a problem, maybe just decide together what are the dimensions we want to look at and how you can monitor or gather information on these without disturbing them. I make an example. For example, for us, it can be interesting in understanding how much they learn during the citizen science project on soil quality. We can ask them with a set of questions, but if we don't want to interview them, then you can have, for example, a roundtable discussion at the end and ask them, what did you learn? And report this information to us. The important thing is to have something that you can report on in a little bit more reliable terms than, okay, I got the impression that they learned, but I could not say because I never measured, I never asked them directly, etc. Of course, we trust you're part of the community you work with, so you know them. But it's easier if we think ahead what we want to look at. So then we adapted the data gathering tools to your specific needs. We already developed questionnaires for almost all the areas of impact. but could be, or there could be the need to adapt them. For example, for looking at a behavioral change, we have a set of questions based on literature on if you are pro-environment or not. And we ask at the beginning, at the end, and see if there is a change in pro-environmental attitude or in pro-environmental behaviors. When we worked with the NILU case with the student, we have to rewrite those questions thinking at teenagers. Okay, behaving in a pro-environmental way as an adult is driving a car or a bike. Behaving in a pro-environmental way for being a teenager is something different. I mean, let's say they don't drive the car, for example, so it's useless to ask them. So as I say, ideally, we would like to have an ex-ante and ex-post assessment, so one at the beginning and one at the end. But again, we will discuss on a one-to-one base. Then we do the data analysis, and what you see in bold is what we expect from you. So filling in the canvas, and then together is the one in italic. So have the conversation at the beginning on the canvas, and the data gathering. Let's see how to distribute, for example, a questionnaire. The data analysis, we do it for you. Then we would like to present the results to you, validate it together what we got, and the final step is finalization of the impact assessment report. That is on us, of course. For example, the canvas of the student air pollution and do-it-yourself sensing pilot, which is the one in NILU in Norway. This is how the areas were relevant for this pilot. As you can see, the scientific impact and the social impact and environmental impact were more relevant than the economic one and the political one. In this case, we're able to interview the business manager, but also interview the teachers and interview the students. And for example, from the point of view of the teacher, these activities, for the majority of them, was able to provide students with the new competencies in the use of scientific tools, for example, sensors, positively influence their student attitude towards science, improve the students' scientific competence, so also the data gathering, the data analysis competencies, and improve the interest of students for a scientific related career and science in general. And nicely, these activities also improve the relationship within the class. So this was not something that the pilot was not designed for improving the relationship within the class. But this is a social impact that happened as a side effect of the fact that they were doing together a nice activities, totally new for everybody. So far away from the traditional roles of I'm very good in maths and you are very bad in maths, because they were starting from scratch. And so this helped in creating new relationship in the class. So this is the point of view of the teachers, and then we have the point of view of the student. And nicely, the results are aligned. So the majority of the students declare to have learned something new about air pollution, to have learned something new on technology, and to have learned to have a better understanding of the scientific process. Interesting enough, in this kind of activities, the impact on their behavior is quite low. So they say, yes, I learned, but no, I will not change my behavior because now I know more. And this is okay. From a sociological point of view, is really interesting and is reinforcing what we know. So it doesn't matter the fact that I know that I know more about air quality, do not automatically make me change my behavior in order to live in a city with a better quality of air, for example. And the feedback we give to the pilot on this is like, okay, the next round that is starting next week, let's plan to have an open discussion on how we can change our behaviors in order to tackle the issue under discussion. In the next round, we will see if by adding this discussion, we can see higher degree of interest in changing the behaviors. Okay, of course, there is a discrepancy between what I say and what I will actually do, but at least if they start thinking that they want to change behavior is already something. And we cannot monitor if they really change their behavior with the methodology we have in place, because we cannot, I mean, we are not in Norway and we cannot spy them in other ways. Here again, as the teachers said, also the students say that after the activities, their interest on science-related activities and topics is increased. And this is the transformative impact of the pilot. And you see the learning is the most relevant one. And they are also focusing on learning in order to improve how to do citizen science in schools, for example. But it was also timely because the discussion on air quality in the community was a relevant one, catalyzing because it's easy enough for other schools to join in, and the tools they developed should help more teachers to use citizen science as a learning approach, etc., etc., etc. And this is just how it look at the end, can look your report at the end. And this is all, but I will also, if I succeed in closing this, I would like background that you will meet this evening. Should be this one. Yes. They, without asking them to do so, they incorporated the impact assessment. So at the end of the project, they created the PowerPoint presentation describing their pilots. And then by using the categories of impact of our approach, they, I'm going there. Okay. They consider the various areas of impact, how relevant they were, and add how this impact was relevant and what was it. So scientific impact, for example, for them was by opening up new field, namely the intimate and private space as the domestic backyard. Through a multidisciplinary approach, we believe that we have able to establish a baseline and a departing point for new scientific possibility with greater impact on a common natural landscape. And they basically used the impact methodology for thinking about internally to their impact. This is before we did our own analysis that we are finalizing in these days, but was just for showing you that you can then use the impact assessment results for your dissemination activities by incorporating them in communication materials. And that's it. Question and answer.